first edition of Ag Outlook. I'm your host, Sabrina Ley. Ag Outlook will be a show highlighting aspects of agriculture in the southwest Minnesota area. Today we will be heading out to Tyler, Minnesota to interview a farmer about harvesting, Bob Andersen. Then we will head out to CHS in Ruthton, Minnesota and talk to Joel Wiering at the elevator about what happens to the corn after it's harvested.
I'm Bob Andersen. I live on a farm here that is been in the farm for over 100 years. Right now I'm corn and soybean farmer. Earlier in my career, when I was more fully employed, I fed livestock and also farmed more than I do right now. I'm essentially somewhat semi-retired. I'm 65, so I farm about half what I used to. Okay. So I do some custom work besides what we do here. So we can get our work done without getting too excited most of the time.
Gotcha. And you talk about we. Who all helps you out on the farm here, running the land and such?
There is occasional labor that I sometimes get my kids, if they're free and around, that in the fall will do tillage. The principal guy that helps me is used to be a contractor, and he's running the equipment, if you can hear it in the background.
Yep.
And so he works part-time, so he doesn't need full-time employment, so it works good for both of us. I'm very happy to have him.
So we're talking a little bit about harvest this year, and I guess we can kind of start at the beginning. As for spring, how is your spring different or similar to, say, last year or past years?
There's an expression, plant in dust, the bins will bust. You've heard that one. Mm-hmm. April was very dry, so we sit and worry about, gosh, is it going to be a dry year? So we got off to a very fast start. And then it started to rain, and we've had ample moisture. And then, of course, about the time when it rains a lot, then we sit and worry about, well, is it going to be a wet harvest? And then the rain shut off, and so it's been an exceptional year. I do not have anything in my memory bank that I can compare it to. Okay. It's just been a heck of a year.
And that's what we seem to be hearing with a lot of farmers. It's just a year that they haven't seen in all of their years of farming. And then kind of moving into the summer, were there any things that you ran into that maybe affected yield a little bit? Weeds, insects, just certain things that maybe you ran into that were kind of little wedges in the farming aspect this year?
I, along with everybody else, struggle with Roundup Ready resistant weeds that are coming into play, and how you try and control them. And in the process you figure out, well, this worked and that didn't work so good, and did different things. And it's an ongoing problem, and it's just Roundup was very beneficial to people, and that it made everybody look like a good farmer. No matter how high the weeds were, you went out and sprayed them and they died. It doesn't happen that way anymore. So I mean, you use different chemicals, different times, timing is important. So yeah, every year is kind of a learning experience because you're going through something new.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot more that the co-ops need to learn a lot more about talking with farmers and learning the plant chemistry in order to know what to do with the timing and the management of those chemicals and how to manage all of that. Yeah,
they see a lot, and a lot of it gets to be down to timing. One of the procedures that I used was going with a chemical immediately after I've planted my soybeans. When my sprayer truck broke down, guess what? That doesn't happen. So then you go to Plan B, and Plan B wasn't as good as Plan A. And so even then there are things you can do, and yeah, some things work better than others, let's put it that way.
Yep. And so then kind of moving in again to the next season of fall, how has this harvest been so far? How much do you have left?
We're through soybean harvest, which is the largest crop we've ever raised by a ways. So that's wonderful. Prices aren't so good, so having more crop, at least you get more it helps pick up the slack, let's put it that way.
Yep.
We've just started on corn harvest. We do not have, because of my size at this point, I don't worry about planting early, maturing corn so I can get started early. So the corn that I'm going through at the moment is, it's harvestable, but it's plenty wet. This weekend's supposed to be warm. Mother Nature dries corn way cheaper than I can. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, those dryer bins rack up, don't they?
It wasn't too long ago that LP was really expensive, and so yeah, it's cheaper now. But even so, when nature will do what for you, then you go with that. You'll go with that.
And so you talked a little bit about prices of beans and corn and how they're kind of low this year. Did that change any of your management decisions on the farm on what to plant, or did you kind of go with the same general acres that you usually do with those crops?
Probably a mix of, I used to be at one point 2/3 corn because I thought I could generate more money that way.
Okay.
Now it's closer to a little about maybe 55–60% corn, 45%, don't do the math on that one. So it's pretty much fairly close to a 50-50. What was the question again? How it affected marketing, you know, in any crop is from a year prior to when you harvest to probably about a year after.
Okay.
The best stuff that I sold was probably sold a year ago, last July.
Okay.
You could lock in $5 for this year's crop. That's futures price. And I locked in some, and of course I thought I can make this work. Obviously I probably didn't do enough in hindsight, but everybody wants two chances to market their crop, once when they think it's right and once when it actually is.
Yep. It all seems to be like a gambling game with it all.
Well,
figuring out which part you should be doing and which you shouldn't, and stuff like that.
I'm an older generation that have been around for a while, and so you try and allow, when the good times are good, it's fairly prudent not to spend it all. And because I've been around long enough to know there are times when things are kind of tough, and it's important to be able to last, so you can hang around for the good years again.
Yep.
And so it'll be okay. It was far more fun hauling grain in when corn was $7 or beans were $15. You know, a semi-load of corn is like $7,000, or legal load limit would be a little less than that. So yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of like, well, I feel kind of a little bit like the farmer that, or the coach that won the Super Bowl and hung around too long. You know, it just, yeah, it was a whole lot more fun then, because you to a certain extent, it felt like you owned a printing press. It just kind of like, hey, this is fun.
Yep.
This is fun.
We can do this on a regular basis. And so you talked a little bit about kind of lasting through the hard times. Did you make any management decisions this year in cuts of fertilizer or such because you knew prices were maybe going to go down?
No, fertilizer is one of those things that pays, and fertilizer for next year is working its way lower. You basically, the more bushels you have, the less expenses. You know, you cut out too much on fertilizer and then the yield goes down. That's pretty much a math problem.
Yep.
You know, I mean, do the returns exceed the costs?
Yep.
You got to do that all the time. Some of the cuter stuff that people can do, if you get caught up in, well, it'll return you an extra 2 bushels an acre. Well, when it's worth $8, that's $16. When it's worth 15, it's 30. So, you know, some of that stuff has a far better return when the prices are higher. As management-wise, what have I done different? I've been, I don't need to replace the equipment. You know, obviously the equipment dealers are hurting because there's a lot of inventory out there. There's been a lot of trading fairly often. When prices are good, it's probably a good program. When things get a little tough, they don't. So
I guess kind of to maybe wrap it up, is there anything else about harvest that you feel people should know? Anything that you've heard around the block when talking to other farmers?
I think it's been in the press quite a bit that this is going to be the best production history or best yields for Minnesota. You know, we've talked about weather climate shifts, and Minnesota is essentially benefited from that shift. Some of the weather has shifted north. What's the date today? The 8th?
Yep.
October 8th. They don't look for possible frost for another week. That's close to way late. I've also read articles where they talked about we've got an extra 8 to 9 growing days than what we used to have.
Oh, really?
So that allows us, you know, the corn across the road over there, if you look that way, you notice it's still green.
Yep.
That's 103-day corn, which when I was younger, we'd never consider growing that length of corn. I think that should work very well for us.
Yep.
We'll find out.
And I suppose with kind of those extra 8 or 9 days, you get to sleep maybe a little more at night and you don't have to put in as many hours straight, right?
Well, you know, I can remember growing up when the frost would come and all of a sudden, you know, like you chop silage and you better get out there and get it done because that stuff will dry, get to the point where it's too dry, it's hard to keep.
Yep, it's hard.
And now it's just kind of like, okay, I helped the neighbor chop silage and it's kind of like, oh, well, we're doing it. And I mean, if we don't, I spent too many years, it's kind of like, we got to get this done.
Yep.
Because every day it's getting drier.
Exactly.
So.
Alrighty, well, thank you for meeting with us, Bob, and talking a little bit about your farm and harvest. We greatly appreciate it.
All right, been fun talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. Now that we've learned a little bit about harvesting from Bob, we'll work on to the next step at CHS in Ruthton with Joel Wiering. Alrighty, we are here with Joel Wiering at CHS. Joel, if you want to take a minute to introduce yourself and your role here at CHS, that would be great.
Yeah, so I work at our Ruthton location for CHS Marshall Regional. I'm the Regional Grain Department Manager for our country operations. We have elevators here in Ruthton, Tracy, Minnesota, Marshall, Minnesota, as well as Elkton, South Dakota.
Very cool. So as working at an elevator, what is your role here? What exactly do you do in the Ruthton location?
So I oversee the marketing side of our operation as well as the operation side of our operations. Behind us, you see us dumping grain on those large conveyors into the bunker. That would be considered the operation side of it.
Okay.
So one thing I have to do there is manage our space and logistics. As you can see by that mountain of beans, it's almost full.
Yes, it is.
So then I have to figure out what we do once it's full if there's still soybeans coming in. So that's one of my jobs, as well as to make sure we have adequate staff at each one of our locations, as well as the right staff, I guess you could say, because these are some difficult jobs we do, so having the right trained personnel is a huge thing for us. Inside the office here where I work, that's a whole different side of it. There it's more the marketing side of it. We buy grain from the farmers, so I'll spend a lot of time on the phone. I have staff who buys grain, does our accounting, does our clerical work. They take care of that side of it for me, so I don't have to do a lot of it. So they do most of the buying.
Yep.
And then I do most of the selling of the grain. So they buy it, and then I sell it. And we sell to many different places throughout the country and the world. Those beans behind us will probably end up on a ship or barge heading to China.
Wow.
A lot of the corn we buy here, we end up selling to California, Texas, some the West Coast. It may even end up in China, Japan as well. So we have many different destinations, not only domestic, but internationally as well for our grain.
Very cool. Sounds like you're a very busy guy around here.
Yeah, this time of year especially. My wife said she saw me 3 or 4 hours last week, and I asked if it was good or bad, and she said it was okay. She said I'm not getting my honeydew list done, but no, it's a very busy time of year. My staff puts in a lot of hours,
Yeah.
But that's part of the job, that's part of the nature, and as a co-op, I mean, we're farmer owned. We're producer owned. Anything we make in profit, we return to the farmer as patronage. So they're our owners, so we essentially work for them. So our job is to make sure that we're able to dump their grain efficiently, buy it competitively, and give them an opportunity at very good markets.
Lots of different channels to be working with, obviously. Now, when looking at grain from this year versus last year, are there different things you see from year to year in the season here at the grain elevator, like farmers do from year to year, kind of thing?
Yeah, certainly. Now yields, we're just getting towards the tail end of bean harvest. Bean yields have been very good. Some would say it's the best crop we've ever had. Some places were hurt with some hail, too much rain. That certainly can happen. But I think overall, probably one of the better crops we've seen in southwestern Minnesota. We haven't really got into corn yet, but we anticipate yields to be just as good on corn as we saw on the bean side. So very good for the farmer, the producer, very difficult from our end because we have to now manage this larger crop that's probably going to come to town. So luckily here in Ruthton, we have the ability to ship on the rail, and we can get rid of a lot of grain on a train real quickly. So we've really tried to make sure we balanced our train sales so we can continue dumping grain.
Gotcha. Very cool. And now you talk about people and farmers bringing in their grain and such like that. Are there certain requirements that farmers need to do in order for you to want to buy their grain?
Yes. I mean, for the most part, and it's become standard over the years, we do like the grain to be drier.
Okay.
Just because with anything wet, you leave yourself open for potential losses. I mean, whether it's a shrink or just off grade, could rot or whatnot. So we do like dry grain coming in, as well as just clean grain. And I think it's become a standard over the years that it's not that big of a deal, but for the most part, just good quality grain is all we ask for. And if somebody does have a problem and does have some off quality grain, we'll discount accordingly, but we'll still take it and then hopefully able to blend it off per se or mix it with good grain, still giving the farmer a chance to get rid of that grain essentially.
Okay.
So.
Okay, very cool. Is there anything else about harvest that has been really different this year that you want to mention?
You know, one thing we're finding each year is compared to the last year is just how fast and efficiently the farmer can take out his crop. And the farmer has almost is outpacing what we can do at the elevators. And in some cases, a farmer might have more trucks than I do. And so he's bringing his grain to market more rapidly than we've ever seen before. So being able to handle it is certainly becoming a challenge and something that we have to look at every day. And how can we get better? How can we get faster to keep pace with the farmer?
Yeah, I think that's very important. Is there anything unique that you'd like to share with people about working at an elevator, or something that maybe beforehand you would have never thought you would be doing?
I graduated 7 years ago, so I've been with CHS for 7 years, in this position for 6 years, and every day is different. And that's one unique thing I do like about the job, is because I do have a calendar and I do have a lot of things I need to do on a daily basis that are consistent, but any day can change. Like I said, once this bunker goes full, I got to figure out what to do with the rest of the beans. So every day is different.
Yep.
It's fast-paced, it's challenging, but what I like about it is agriculture is a very huge part of southwestern Minnesota and our largest industry here. So I enjoy being in the industry, and I think that's what makes it fun as well, is having the opportunity to interact with these farmers and producers, because like I said, at the end of the day, we're a co-op, we're farmer owned, so they're my boss per se.
It's your #1 priority.
Yep.
And then to kind of wrap things up, is there anything else that you'd like to let people know about Harvest or the elevator, or CHS in particular?
One thing I just want to continue to stress is safety. My guys, farmers, are working very long hours, and just continue to be vigilant on the roads and watch out for those farmers who might not look the second time when they should, or might not have lights on the back of a wagon or forgot to plug them in, essentially. Just, you know, I tell my guys, my biggest fear is having to go home to your spouse and say, you're not coming, or you're not going to be, your husband or wife isn't coming home tonight. So I just tell my guys, I want you to go home better than how you came to work. So that's one thing I'd like to stress, is just safety and being vigilant to ensure everyone else's safety too.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Joel, for meeting with us and telling us a little bit about CHS. Thanks for joining us on our first episode of Ag Outlook. I hope you learned a little bit today about Harvest and what happens at an elevator. We hope you join us on the next episode, where we'll talk to Lee French and Art Bauer about the research of SMSU.